years ago, a television show captured America's imagination like never before. With a powerful style of storytelling combining outrageous plot lines, dramatic plot twists, and riveting over-the-top characters, Americans became addicted to it, with millions actually thinking it was real. Obviously, it's not. There's no way something this insane could ever actually be real. It's a fictional TV show called American Emperor. Like Succession, Game of Thrones, and Breaking Bad, all rolled into one. Each week, this podcast goes behind the scenes to break down each episode, talking to insiders and fans to bring you everything you need to know. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. This week, a powerhouse two-part episode. The Trump character gets sworn in, and it's not in a courtroom. Pageantry and tradition abound as the Trump character fulfills America's promise, giving an inaugural address to the masses of billionaires. Truly the president of the everyman. Every man with a car elevator. Ah yes, bring us your pasty, your socially awkward, your overly sensitive and disturbingly rich, yearning to be free from federal regulations. This year we were indoors, but was that due to the weather, or were they afraid if the sun hit Zuckerberg's skin, would he immediately burst into flames? Plus, what did the Trump character and the Obama character talk about? It's like the end of Lost in Translation, except you can't be entirely sure something racist wasn't said. And the Trump character parties with the village people. Sadly, after the show, the construction workers' union was dissolved, the Indian was taken into custody by ICE, and the policeman was attacked by a crowd of MAGAs. Wasn't all bad though. Leatherman got 5 flame taps on Grindr, and in the aftermath of a Cybertruck blowing up in front of a Trump hotel in Las Vegas, are we at peak metaphor? What's next? A bald eagle hospitalized for overdosing on hymns? All in all, a dizzying week with storylines introduced and resolved at a frantic pace. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm Christopher Lansing. I'm joined by author, filmmaker, and pop culture critic Tom Robb. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
So much to get to. Let's get at it. Another phenomenal episode. This was a banger of a two-parter. Obviously, the inauguration episode kicking off season 3, a lot of pageantry, not as much as the season 1 inauguration episode. A lot of differences between the two episodes, though. Number one, this most recent one was indoors. The scope was smaller. Last time around, they did that big storyline of crowd sizes in season 1. Obviously, they wanted to avoid that this year. They put the event inside, so no crowd size storyline. Was that a good decision in your opinion?
I think it was. I mean, I think it's important to say they had to have their main character win the election, as unlikely as that was. And if you're going for something so over the top, why not do something different and take a radical left turn? So an indoor thing that could make him mad, but he always triumphs over adversity and the obvious in front of him. So he was able to do what the character does best, which is grumble, seem angry, but also seem incredibly pleased, like everything is going his way.
100%. And, also lessons learned from Star Wars, okay? The Death Star was an amazing thing in the first Star Wars movie. Oh, look, we're seeing it again in Jedi. Oh, and then we have to destroy a weapon like the Death Star in Episode 7. Dude, all the investments they made in the Death Star, you destroyed 3 planets, okay? And then you had to rebirth your fascist movement 4 times in the course of 40 years. You don't have number crunchers up there to tell you that it's not working. So I'm glad they didn't go with the same crowd size stuff. We've seen it before. Let's move on. You're 100% right. This time around, not only was it a different setting in a way, being indoors, there was a different focus. Focus was on the people who came. For the first time around, you had the scope, you had the bigger space, you had the outdoors. This time, a little bit more intimate. Like, you could see Neil Young play MSG, but wouldn't you want to see him more intimate at a place like the Beacon? Talk about the choice writers and producers made there to increase the intimacy.
I call call it a cafe inauguration or a coffee house inauguration. Intimate, acoustic, and one-on-one, like you really want to see your favorite stars. How wonderful. And to make sure every one of the actors is less attractive than the star was another great move.
Yes. Let's focus on that for a second. A ton of focus on billionaires and a lot more of a focus on who was and who wasn't at this particular inauguration due to the smaller space. Let's just run down a couple of people. Season 1 antagonist Hillary Clinton was there. Do you think the audience was happy to see her there? Were you happy to see her there?
I was happy to see her there because she has a sort of spoiler. You know, what's she going to do? Is she going to throw a pie? Is she going to throw ink? Is she going to deface one of the statues? Is she going to try to ruin the event? So that was a little bit of jeopardy. The actors that played the billionaires, and of course, this is a long tradition, like Dallas or White Lotus, having this being about the super rich. You had that actor playing Jeff Bezos, a sort of bald Bond villain sort of actor who looks physically like male genitalia. And then most of these people, like many of the super rich, they found actors that looked good with simulated plastic surgery, people that had been lifetime nerds and doofuses who'd spent a lot of money to look like normal humans. The effect is awe-inspiring.
It is, you know, and I did think it was interesting too to see the Hillary character again. I don't know if the audience was necessarily thrilled to see her, but I do think when you have such an incredible story like the American Emperor is telling, it ends up being so vast and so boundless. I think they are thinking ahead. Look at what happened with the Marvel universe. They needed to invent the multiverse, which allowed them to bring back characters like the Green Goblin. They brought back a previous Spider-Man. They were able to confront the aging of their actors via the multiverse. They said, hey, the original Peter Parker is still out there. Yeah, sure, he's 45 years old now, but here's how we can explain it. And I think they're hinting that if our show continues on the trajectory that it's on, we may have a multiverse thing in there. And that's why you're seeing a Hillary Clinton appear. That's why you're also seeing the Kamala Harris and the Biden entity present. You did have this very strange collection of quote unquote, antagonists to the Trump character. The Pence character was there without his wife, whose name is Mother. Is that the Pence's swan song, or will we see them again? Same thing with that Obama character. He's there and he's without his wife. Are they hinting that the marriage is in trouble?
I think the absence and presence of these anti-characters is indeed a hint that we're going to see more of them. And your mention of Marvel superhero series, we're going to see Michelle Obama in spandex flying in a future episode. The same with Mother and the same with Hillary. You know, the Biden character, the actor is close to retirement. He insisted against all the writers and producers who felt sorry for him to play his last couple of scenes. And I think they regretted it. They had to edit a lot around him because he can't memorize lines. They need to spray paint things on walls for him to see.
And also the robot that they have that plays him is such an antiquated robot itself. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. If you've had an iPhone for so long, at a certain point, it becomes unable to be updated. And the latest software can't come into it. So the software update for this robot that they employ to play a lot of this Biden entity's roles was unable to be updated. So here you have clearly the technology. You can notice it. It's just not functioning in a sense that fits in with its new settings.
Yes, he's closer now to the robot in Lost in Space than a modern, say, real doll or something that plays a lot of the women in this series.
100%. Let's talk about the billionaires. You had the Zuckerberg character, the Google guy character. Of course, Musk is there, and then the Bezos guys. Clearly, one of the themes this season is billionaires. So the Trump character was always associated with being a billionaire, even though there was a lot of question, was he actually one? Then they bring in the Musk character, who's clearly a billionaire. Is there room for 2 billionaires? Now, all of a sudden, we're up to like 6 or 7 billionaires. What are they doing with these billionaires? Are we going to keep piling them on? Clearly that's a theme of the season.
I think people love billionaires. And I think billionaires are a window into a lot of different subjects. Ugly people being made over, high fashion, expensive but tacky. The Zuckerberg character had a new haircut, not that strange pasted Caesar cut, but a sort of tousled natural look, which I think in a country with a sort of lottery mentality where people vote against their own interests in the hope that they too will no doubt not have to pay taxes when they're billionaires, it's heartening to see that you can correct physical abnormalities as well.
But also you're seeing that he's a billionaire, a multi-billionaire many times over, and he does have this ridiculous Caesar cut haircut throughout the run of the show. Comes back with this new haircut and a billionaire, and that's the best he could do. Of all the billions that he has, he can't bring in not only the greatest hairdressers in the world, but scientists. We're showing it now. This is what they left him with. I think the show is also saying you can have all the money in the world, but if you're a dork, you're still a dork.
It's true. And since most billionaires are bald, they've tried in the past to hire bald actors. And what they got was the need to insert hair plugs. You had people with shaved Barbie doll heads with these plugs in them, which just alarmed people. So I think now they have a wonderful wig maker. It's been refused by the Jeff Bezos characters, by that actor. But yes, I think it sends a message. And these billionaires are a route to a lot of fascinating subjects for Americans.
True. And the Bezos character that you mentioned, his backstory, they give you glimpses of it here and there. At one point, he did have hair. Then he was going through male pattern baldness. And then they made the decision that once he got to be the rich person that he is and started to transform physically with all the surgery, with all the enhancements, I think the writers and the producers were going to say, we're just going to keep going forward on this idea of this physical transformation with this guy until he actually looks like male genitalia. And we're getting there, as you mentioned a little bit earlier. He's looking more and more like a penis, physically, like a representation of a penis. His head is becoming shaped that way. So that is an interesting metamorphosis to watch. Again, it goes back to you can have all the money in the world, but is dorkism inherent to you that's unchangeable and it doesn't matter? Maybe that's a theme of the season that's upcoming. And finally, and this was very satisfying, they bring in the Fetterman character, who we have discussed is likely in a huge coup for producers, played by the actual Sasquatch. They have him dressed like he's just done lawn work, but, not as nice. Your thoughts on that appearance, how they're using him? Because I think it's like they're running with this guy now.
Yes. I mean, I remember the character description in reading the original Bible was something between a gutter cleaner and a meth dealer. And they found him. They found him in one of the last remaining Yetis that is secretly in captivity. And he really fills the bill. And this Yeti can act. He needs to do little more than sort of lope around and actually not pull the hoodie off or pull the sort of mesh shorts off. He plays his role. You wouldn't have thought it possible that such an over-the-top thing could exist in either party, but yet it does in this universe.
It's phenomenal, and it always captures the imagination. Also, the fact that he's 7'9" is another factor that just kind of makes this such a unique character. They're handling him perfectly. They're giving you good enough taste. The old axiom, leave him wanting more. Hook, line, and sinker over here. I want more.
Oh, I want more too. He comes from an uninhabitable area, the character in Pennsylvania. He's truly someone the character looks sort of damaged by toxicity, raised and mutated by poisons in his home environment.
Now that I think about it more, I do think we'll see a storyline involving him. I would be surprised if this didn't happen, where he goes and finds his creator and murders his creator.
I've read snippets that the writers have shown me where he challenges Hegseth to one-on-one basketball. He chokes out Kristi Noem. They've tried a lot of things. They're going to try everything with this character.
Let's say you're Vegas setting the odds for this. What are the odds that you're setting for the Fetterman character that he, quote unquote, knows his own strength?
That's excellent. I think that's going to come up. I think it's going to be like the Lenny character in Of Mice and Men, where he accidentally kills, beginning with small animals and children up until important figures of state.
Let's talk for a minute about the symbolism of the whole thing, because that definitely had a major impact. The ceremony was held in the rotunda, same place 4 years ago, that supporters broke in and covered the walls with their own poop. The Trump character is essentially saying, hey, I had a horde of ignoramuses in here, many with terrible beards, by the way, almost kill you all. And you turned around and you enabled my return as a president. And I'm taking the oath right here. Obviously, a big statement made by producers and writers. Would you agree?
Yes, I think they're showing that there's no amount of outrageous action in the show that's out of reach. I mean, I know with the nominations, they wanted Rex Heuermann, that character, to be a Secretary of State. That wasn't considered over the top. I mean, the Gilgo Beach serial killer to be an important international figure, but he differed on tariffs, the character, or the real person.
Yeah, he obviously maintained that the consumer eventually does pay for the tariff, and that goes against what the Trump character believed.
He was out. He was out. But I mean, the idea that they would float that as a character shows that there's nothing beyond the pale.
Also, even though this man is a malicious, disgusting murderer, he did have enough sense to understand the concept of a tariff and what it means to the impact it makes on an economy.
Well, if you've ever read anything that Rex Heuermann has written, he has a great understanding of the business relationships between neighboring countries. I'm not sure that factored into his murder of prostitutes, but I'm sure it was probably a subject of conversation before they were killed.
Yeah, I understand that a lot of the prostitutes were like, wow, this guy's really into economic theory, before he was then strangling them with their own brassiere.
Well, I'm sure it was very disarming before he literally disarmed them.
Especially if you're a prostitute and you go in to see a prospective client, and the next thing you know, you're being given a lecture on supply and demand, and now you're like thrown off because now your defenses are down, and the next thing you know, you're dead. So it is a very unique way of killing somebody.
Often in the solicitations on the phone, when he would make arrangements, things like NAFTA would come up. They went in knowing that they were dealing with somebody who would give a whiteboard talk on different kinds of trade issues.
If you're not watching the YouTube version, we're rolling tape of an interview given by a prostitute who escaped the clutches of this monster. She's commenting on how much he was into economic theory.
I remember he called and asked if anyone there was familiar with Milton Friedman, and also if we gave good blowjobs.
And just so you know, in the New York City area, there are a deficit of prostitutes who are advocates for free trade. And it's probably the legacy of this guy.
True, and I know that's something that Joel Rifkin, who was also an amateur economist, experienced when he would abduct women from Allen Street and bring them out to Long Island.
Back to the symbolism of this episode. What do you make of the Chief Justice Roberts character swearing him in? I thought it was brilliant. Here's a character who in season 2 grants the Trump character wide-ranging immunity. So it's like, oh yeah, here's an oath for you to take that I have rendered meaningless. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I thought that's a little nod, a little bit of humor that instead of a Bible he wanted him to swear on, which he didn't. He had that book of Satanism by Aleister Crowley. They do a lot of little humorous jibes here and there. Having somebody who doesn't believe in the rule of law asking for an oath about the law.
Here's a man who also has been embraced by the evangelical movement within the narrative of the show. And of course, they're holding a Bible for him to swear on, and he does not put his hand on it. So that was an excellent little touch there. A lot of great little touches by writers and producers here. I've said it 1,000 times. This is, what these guys do so well. Okay, let's look at the actual speech here. It was 2,900 words, which is crazy. They had some moments of humor.
I was saved by God to make America great again. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. And we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs.
I mean, there's a lot of laughs in here denouncing this DEI. How do you compare it with the American Carnage speech from the first season?
I think this is more lighthearted, but it belies the fact that some serious changes are going to happen on this show. Rumors that over the course of the next year, every state will be renamed for a member of
Interesting.
Trump's family or close friends. California will be called Bannon, and New York will be called Barron. We're going to be seeing a lot of stuff changing, and renaming is going to be one of the most muscular policy decisions that occurs.
That makes sense. That's why there's probably so much focus early on like that. Now, let me ask you this: were writers and producers trying to pull off too much comedy here in this episode? Because I mean, look how they dressed Melania and what they did with her hat. I mean, was she like stopping by the inauguration on her way to rob a bank in the 1930s? I mean, look at this outfit.
It was a fearsome outfit, and people that reviewed the show talked about her keeping a distance with people.
Normally, I watch every minute of the show, but I do have to admit, at one point, I did step away from my television set. When I came back, I wonder, did I miss a section where she left the rotunda to go appear in a production of Chicago? Because maybe that was why she was dressed like that. Well, listen, we're all leading up to this spectacular moment, the highlight of this like secondary party thing. At one point during the quote unquote celebration, they bring out a small desk and they start having the Trump character sign executive orders. And to me, that's like, is that how you party? What are you saying here? Clearly, that's some nerd shit. What'd you make of that?
So Lawrence Davies is smaller than he actually looks and likes to look much larger than set pieces around him. This is another way to appease him. They'll have a 2/3 scale car that he'll get into, so he looks like a giant.
Similar to the way they filmed Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. Yeah, very much so.
Interesting. Now, this whole thing, these rallies, these post-inaugural celebrations, it all leads up to this peak moment where they somehow dig up the ultimate in shitty cameos. They find the Village People to perform. Trump does his dance next to him. What did you make of the performance by the Village People? And what did you hear about what went into getting them to show up?
Well, I think getting the real Village People to show up took no more than a phone call and $230. I think that musically, of course, we all have to acknowledge the Village People were gifted musicians with an incredible sort of sense of stagecraft, also represent the panoply of America, the policeman, the cowboy, the Native American, the construction worker. I mean, who isn't represented in this wonderful range, this wonderful spectrum? It's the true Rainbow Coalition.
I know what you're leading up to, and you see it right there, plain as day. The members of the band, the cowboy, the Indian, the police officer, the construction worker, are the voting public within the narrative of the American Emperor show that responds to the Trump character. Beautiful. Also, just beautiful.
A new anthem for new America, I suppose.
When we come back, we're going to answer some questions that you, the listeners, have. That's right. Talking Trump Talk Back when we return. You're listening to Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. Hello, Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow listeners. Thanks so much for listening and subscribing. We'll get right back with more show in just a minute. But before we do, just wanted to remind some of you that right here on the show at this very moment is an excellent place for a sponsor to run an ad. Just reach out to us on Instagram at American Emperor Aftershow or by email at AmericanEmperorPod@gmail.com and get your message or product out and associated with this amazing podcast. Hopefully there'll be some space left for you, BetterHelp or ZipRecruiter, because the high-powered sponsors are already claiming their territory. Okay. What we have here is really our first read for the show. What a read is essentially a client will purchase a commercial for the show, and they produce all the elements for the commercial. So they kind of like the commercial kind of rolls in the background, and all that's left to add is my live voice reading the copy. You hear this all the time on radio, so we're going to do it here. And increasingly you hear them on podcasts all the time. So it's no biggie. But for us, it's a biggie because it's our first one. So okay. Okay. This read is for a company that makes small, I guess you would call them small coffins. These would be coffins that differ in size from standard coffins. You might imagine they'd be used to, bury someone of smaller stature. And, you might even imagine that they would be used to bury a child, which is obviously a tragic event in any case. But I would imagine if you were ever unfortunate enough to be in a situation like that, and you'd probably want a company to deal with that was experienced and professional. So, in a way, this company offers quite a service. Anyway, all that being said, let's give this a try. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. At Hearthstone Memorial, we understand that saying goodbye to the child is the hardest thing a family will ever have to face. I'm sorry. Are we playing the right music? Are we? Is that the? Do we have the right music lined up for this? Can you check that? Yeah. Okay. It just seems like that wouldn't be the music for something like this. Okay. All right. Yeah. At Hearthstone Memorials, we understand that saying goodbye to a child is the hardest thing a family will ever have to face during such an unimaginable loss. Yeah. I think that there's an issue. Are we playing the right music? This isn't what they wanted us to play underneath the read, is it? It is. Can you know what? Can you go back to the original email that they sent? You are. I can't hear you through the glass. Okay. During such an unimaginable loss, your child deserves a resting place as special as they are. Our handcraft coffins are, you know what? I'm not comfortable with what you're. Are we sure that we're playing the right? We're sure you're playing it. This is what they sent. Can you forward that email to me? Because this could easily be. We're gonna give them. See if they're around to talk before. Our handcraft coffins are made with care, compassion, and love, honoring the beautiful life they lived. Each detail is thoughtfully designed to bring comfort and peace to families during this difficult time. This doesn't sound weird to you? Because every child leaves a lasting mark on our hearts, and their memory deserves to be cherished forever. Oh, come on. Hearthstone Memorials, crafted with love for those we love. Are you sure you got everything in it? Did you want to play the Benny Hill theme, maybe? All right, welcome back to Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. I'm with author, director, and pop culture critic, Mr. Tom Robb. Time now for the segment where we answer questions from you, the audience. This is Talking Trump, Talk Back. By the way, if you want to send us a question, hit us up on Instagram at American Emperor Aftershow. Our first question comes from Rebecca Conway of Madison, Wisconsin, and she says, during the opening credits of the first episode, the show showed Trump character attending the funeral of Jimmy Carter. A lot was made of a sequence where the Trump character spoke to the Obama character. Any idea what they talked about? From what I understand, the Obama character, Trump character conversation really consisted of the Obama character assuring the Trump character that there wasn't any after party afterward.
If you're not watching the YouTube version, we're rolling tape of alternate takes leaked from the set of American Emperor of the conversation between the Trump character and the Obama character.
Oh yeah, we're all gonna go home. No one's meeting out at a bar for a drink or anything, yeah.
He was basically going, because all those other characters had been present, the Clinton character and the George W. Bush character. I think he was basically trying to throw the Trump character off the scent so he didn't show up at the bar afterwards when they were all going out for a drink.
I heard they had different audio tracks to bring up of what he said. And the one that everybody voted on, but then they decided against was, I'd totally fuck Amy.
I'd totally fuck Amy.
Of course, the Carter daughter who was in evidence. And I think that was considered maybe something they'd use later.
I also heard there was an alternate take where the Trump character, who famously doesn't really know who the Obama character is, he actually confuses him with being the former NBA player Dr. J, would ask the Obama character about his days with the Sixers and just ask for like stories about Moses Malone.
What was it like to play with Mose Malone, tenacious rebounder, right?
I am not Dr. J.
Who is a much revered NBA player, Hall of Famer, and great rebounder. Also, the Trump character sometimes forgets that he thinks that the Obama character is Dr. J, and he thinks he's actually the musician George Benson. So we would ask him questions about jazz guitar.
What was the inspiration behind Give Me the Night?
I am not George Benson.
Also, another plot line was that he didn't have any idea who Jimmy Carter was or why he was there. So he might have recognized Obama for who he was, but said, what the fuck are we doing here? What is this thing?
Yes. And the Obama character would have to like explain to him not only that they were at a memorial for the Jimmy Carter character, but that Jimmy Carter was a previous president and all that.
Right. See that Gerald Ford, who followed on Nixon, the Trump character usually says, nah, too much information.
Yeah. And also the Trump character has problems dealing with the idea that Carter, a peanut farmer, also somehow was able to manage a peanut farm and then use that same brain to direct one of the earliest nuclear submarines, something that would blow the Trump character's mind.
He does peanuts, then they give him a sub with nukes.
Our next question comes to us from Kyle Remington of Concord, New Hampshire, and he asks, as we head into season 3 of American Emperor, outside, of course, of the Trump character, who would you say would be the MVP of season 2?
That's a great question. I would have to say that so far, it's Barron Trump. I think he promises a great deal in the future. He's now 8'6". How can this not be a wonderful circus act to come? He's eclipsed the other two sons, who we've talked about being exiled to other nations as non-citizens. I think we're going to see a lot from Barron, a lot of public positions, a lot of sword fighting, a lot of sort of superpowers.
One thing that has been a recurring theme with the Don Jr. and Eric characters when it comes to their rivalry with the Barron Trump character is that they've always said to themselves, well, if I stand on top of your shoulders, we'll be as tall, if not taller, than the Barron Trump character. And now that is no longer true. And we may see a confrontation.
That little plot line where they would stand on each other's shoulders and wear an extremely long raincoat and take turns being the one that was the head to try to curry favor with their father, which was discovered when they collapsed in a heap. It's very hard to balance, a full-size adult on your shoulders in, sharp street shoes.
My pick's a little controversial. I'm going to say the J.D. Vance character because his role as the vice president character being so distasteful, being such a unattractive character, really enhanced the Trump character and allowed for his return to power to make much more sense in the narrative. Everybody was united in, what a scumbag that other guy is.
He has used an electroshock weapon against a policeman who was dragged out of the defensive line by plunging it into the officer's neck. He was imprisoned, sentenced to 12 years, 7 months. He got a pardon. Ronald Maccabee hit a cop while wearing reinforced brass knuckle gloves, and he held one down on the ground as other rioters assailed the officer for over 20 seconds, causing a concussion. If you stand with law enforcement, how can you call these people unjustly imprisoned?
There's what the people actually did on January the 6th, and we're not saying that everybody did everything perfectly.
Is violence like that against a police officer ever justified?
Violence against a police officer is not justified, but that doesn't mean that you should have Merrick Garland's weaponized Department of Justice expose you to incredibly unfair process.
So that's a kind of a left turn answer on that question, but I'm going to go with Vance for that reason.
I would agree completely. I think that's a really good call. I think Barron Trump still has the edge, but people talk about obesity in modern America, but with somebody with such a pudged out face is bound to be popular with an ever fattening nation. We're going to see him with large buckets of blue juice and a lot of fast food stuff, a lot of Crunch Wraps and Taco Bell stuff and McDonald's food.
You're also going to see it in his beard too.
Yeah, exactly. In that scrubby beard. So, it's a good call.
Okay. All right, stick with us, people. When we come back, we're going to close the show out with a few predictions of what to look out for next week. More Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow, when we return. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. Right now, before we close out the show, a couple of quick predictions for coming weeks. I'm going to go first here because of all the desires for the Trump character to acquire new land, whether it's Greenland, Panama, or whether it's making Canada the 51st state. We're going to see him make a concerted effort to acquire what essentially is Mississippi. And people will say to him, Mississippi is already part of the United States, but the Trump character will not be able to believe that because he will say, there's no fucking way this is part of the United States. I went to Mississippi, and that is a lawless bastion of just incredible poverty and absolute mayhem. We need to take this land. It's in a dangerous zone, and it's right next to the Mississippi River. We need to take that land and make it part of our country. And we'll have a whole episode consisting of planning a military operation to reclaim Mississippi, which is actually filled with Trump supporters, but is actually already a part of the continental United States. And I think that'll be a very interesting way of showing how the Trump character wraps his head around the elements that actually make up this country.
If I had to predict, I think we're going to see a costume change in a lot of episodes. I think we're going to see a lot of meals in fancy restaurants where dignitaries wear mesh tank tops and board shorts. I think the Trump character is going to dress down like an average audience member in a couple of surprising times at international summits and during disasters. I think he'll visit things like the California fire shirtless and in cutoffs. So I think we can have that to look forward to.
That would be outstanding. And again, sometimes the show will work in things that cut down on the budget. And I think that putting the Trump character in a similar outfit that you might find the Fetterman character in not only helps the bottom line financially, but it certainly juxtaposes an entirely different image upon a character that's well established. So to take your prediction a little bit further, maybe it begins a trend, and maybe the population of the United States within the show begins to dress more like the Fetterman character, like the new Trump character, and hoodies and mesh shorts and wearing socks while you're wearing flip-flops. That becomes in vogue, and it may just be another impact that this show has on the country.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for this episode, folks. For Tom Robb, I'm Christopher Lansing. Thanks for joining us, and please check out and subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. The links are in the show notes. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.